I don't know. I got a lot of notes and stuff. I was listening to some podcasts. I've been doing my research. I'm getting in on the tiptoe lore.
Disgusting. Yeah, I feel like the behind the scenes stuff would honestly be more interesting than the actual film.
Yeah, there's a lot to examine here, honestly. So it'd be fun to get into at the very least. Let's just go ahead and get into it and take our punishment. Welcome back to Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast, the show where two former roommates talk about the story of a peculiar love triangle involving two brothers.
Carol and Steven's life together was perfect.
I've got to get going.
Right this second. Hey, baby.
Hey, sweetie. I love you.
There's one small problem.
Hi, I'm Ralph. I'm his brother. We're twins.
Are your parents,
Yeah.
It can tear them apart.
I think you could have let me know that everyone in your family's a midget.
They're not midgets, Carol. They're dwarfs.
Whatever.
Or bring them together.
Hey, welcome. I'm Steven.
Ah, there you are. This is Steven's father, Bruno, and his mom, Kathleen. And over behind the bar is Steven's brother, Rolf.
Hi.
You could have prepared us for this, don't you think?
If you embarrass me, I'll never speak to you again, so just get it together.
How's everybody's drink?
I think maybe I'm pregnant.
When the going gets rough, it's only the size of your heart that counts.
Would it really be that big of a deal if our kid was a dwarf?
You knocked up this great girl and you didn't tell her that her baby's probably gonna be little.
I'm not like you.
We are so cute and cuddly. Don't discriminate against us.
You said these parties got a little wild. I never expected this.
There's sure a lot of midgets around here. You better back off, Goldie Hawn. My man can do what he wants to do.
I'm ready for an adult relationship.
What is this man doing in your bedroom?
A walk down the aisle
Steven's he's a very lucky guy. Just hope he's smart enough not to screw it up.
is just a beginning.
There'll be rough patches, there's no doubt about it.
Canal Plus and Langley Productions proudly present command performances from Kate Beckinsale, Matthew McConaughey, Patricia Arquette, and in the role of a lifetime, Gary Oldman. Tiptoes.
2002's Tiptoes. I just took that straight from IMDb because I thought it was a wonderful summary of what this movie is. I'm Korbin Zvokel, the host of the show, and of course, joining me is my co-host Kody Webb. Kody, do you think that's an accurate representation of peculiar love triangle involving two brothers?
Yeah, I would definitely call it peculiar. I think that's the key word maybe in there. But yeah, this movie is a lot of words, and we're gonna go over a lot. Probably a lot of negatives, I would think, but should be a fun episode altogether. So I'm pretty excited.
We'll get straight into why.
Why me? Why did you pick me?
The reason we're talking about this movie, it's a movie that neither you or I would have probably ever chosen to have a discussion about. But sadly, season 5, episode 11, we did our second annual trivia competition with our compadres over at the Rough Cut Retrospective. And sadly, we lost. So as a punishment for the second year in a row, they got to choose the subject matter of an episode we talked about. Last year, they chose Stalker. This year, they went a little harder on us and gave us Tiptoes. How do you feel about that, them giving us that movie, Kody?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good punishment, so it's understandable. I don't know. I feel like Stalker, like you said, that's more just like a homework assignment in a sense. I feel like this is like, you have to like.
This is like up there with like the fantasy football punishments of, go spend 12 hours at a Waffle House, watch Tiptoes and do a podcast about it is just as bad in my opinion.
This is the definition of a punishment, I think. So good on them. We're due, I think, for a trivia win. Might have to, pull a few strings here and there to try and make sure that happens.
3.5 points. That's what separated us at the end of the competition. That's the difference between doing Tiptoes and not doing Tiptoes.
So, it was a fairly cllose margin, not as close as we would want, but we're coming from this year. So we'll study up and make sure. I mean, we can give some pretty bad, I think, re-punishments back to them, in
That's
line.
The thing. If they lose, they're going to be in for it. That's
they're
for
screwed.
sure.
Oh, we're coming for them now. Yeah. Last year with Stalker, maybe that wasn't like enough motivation for us to care about winning, but I think maybe this will motivate us to do a lot better this year. Yeah.
I think that's definitely true. Let's move on to Do You Remember? Do you remember? This one's pretty easy for both of us because we literally did just watch it. You checked this out on Tubi, Kody? Was that your method of distribution?
I did. Yeah, it was free on Tubi. So hallelujah to Tubi.
Shout out to Tubi.
Yeah, I think I've caught a couple movies in the past, more like smaller projects. It seems are on there.
This is a movie that seems like it would be on Tubi, to be entirely honest with you.
This seems like one they would like advertise as one of their main ones. I feel like just because it has like people in a sense.
It's stars. It's very you sell it based on the people that are in it.
You see McConaughey and Tubi's like throw him on the front page. Like he'll sell. So yeah, shout out Tubi. But like you said, obviously, I mean, this is the first time that we had both seen this film. I don't ever plan on watching it again, and I don't think anybody in their lives had ever planned to watch it originally. So shout out to anybody who has actually seen this movie. But I would highly doubt any of our viewers have, one, heard of this movie, or two, have ever seen it. So shout out if you have. Let us know if you have.
I think that's a really fair point. If you don't know what this is, we'll get into the I'll have Kody give us a little plot overview at the start of initial thoughts. But I agree with you in saying I don't think I'm ever going to watch this movie again. However, I think I wanted to watch them. Like, it's one of those ones where it's like, I'll watch any movie once. I'll check out a bad flick. And I wanted to see what it was about. So at the very least, this gave me a reason to spend 90 minutes. I will never waste another 90 minutes of my life, checking it out again. But for me, it was a Prime watch also, which I thought was interesting.
Nice. Did you have to rent it, or was it on there?
Free on Prime as well. So the people can see this film. This movie was never released in theaters. It was direct to video. And the story behind that I kind of just want to share as an intro to this is movie premieres at Sundance, and it's a cut that the director was not happy with, that was not involved with. He was fired during the post-production of this film. This movie premieres at Sundance. People don't really love it that much. The director buys a ticket, shows up at Sundance, comes up on stage and basically trashes the film, says it's terrible, says this isn't the movie that he, dreamed of putting together. It was recut. It was taken away from him. No distributors wanted to buy it because of that fact. So then it was released direct to video, never played in any theaters. And the director, Matthew Bright, never worked in the film industry again.
Jeez. Shout out Mr. Bright. At least he was passionate about making sure this project was in the right hands. But that's a good way to kill a film, I would think, at a film festival. So shout out to him. But that is crazy. Like I said, I feel like just like watching the movie, I expect there to be craziness like in the post-production and behind the scenes stuff. So that doesn't shock me, but that is really, really interesting.
Yeah. I've got a lot more to share about Matthew Bright and kind of the intricacies of how this movie came to be and what happened afterwards, and what he's been up to in the past 20 years. I listened to a little interview he did like a year ago. So I've got some Matthew Bright knowledge to drop on the people. But let's go ahead and just get into the movie as a whole.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Initial thoughts, Kody. What is Tiptoes? Tell us.
Yeah. It's a good question, and maybe stumbling around here, but for the most part, it is just like this dramedy in a sense, a bit of a rom-com, but as well, it's a bit of a society piece, I feel like, in a sense. So the main plot is obviously Matthew McConaughey is kind of the star here, and he's dating Kate Beckinsale, right? Patricia Arquette's the other one. Yeah, so Kate Beckinsale and him, and she's pregnant. They've been dating for a while, whatever. But then it turns out that Matthew McConaughey is actually the only person who is not a little person in his entire extended family, basically.
Mom, dad, twin brother, literally.
And his twin brother is Gary Oldman, of course, who is not a little person, I don't believe, right, Korbin? Is he
let me, actually, you know what? Let me check. No, he is in fact not. He is a regular full-size person who spent the entire movie on his knees.
Yeah, which I'm sure we'll get into. But past that, plot-wise, it's mostly just like, Kate Beckinsale is like, why didn't you tell me about this? We're probably going to have, a child who is also a little person, which, spoiler alert, is true. So it's pretty messed up he didn't tell her. Then past that, I mean, it changes tones about 10 times, but in the end, it's kind of like a love triangle between Kate Beckinsale, Gary Oldman, which is the surprise, addition to the triangle, because he is Matthew McConaughey's brother. But that's the gist of it, really. This movie's not too deep, I don't think, but it does take a couple twists and turns here.
Yeah, you pointed out the tonal shifts. I think it's all over the place, and a lot of that is because of post-production issues. But it is trying to like simultaneously do a ton of stuff in 90 minutes, but then also like do nothing in the 90-minute span. Where we begin the movie and where we end up in the final shot of Kate Beckinsale essentially like living in a cabin in the woods with Gary Oldman and Patricia Arquette and Peter Dinklage raising their baby on their own from the beginning, when she's just like this weird painter who's in love with a douchey Matthew McConaughey. It is quite the transition. I think literally over a year passes in the span of maybe like two. It's like 2 years take place in this film. When you take from the time of the beginning to their wedding to their child being 10 months old, and then however much longer beyond that. So it's really all over the place. I think we can say right off the top, obviously the Gary Oldman stuff is offensive. It's neither of us are little people, so we can't like really even speak to what it truly means or the effect that that's had on people. And then the way that little people have been, mistreated in film. You can go back all the way to like The Wizard of Oz and the Munchkins and that. And like there's a history of systematic discrimination towards little people in the world of film and the way that they've been used. I think this movie in some ways is like more progressive than any movie that has come before it, but then also is like so much worse than any movie that's come before it. So there's a ton there. We can't really speak to like the true feeling or the true, we can't really say what is and isn't offensive about it. But I think it is important to acknowledge right off the top, it shouldn't have been Gary Oldman in this role.
Oh yeah, I think that is 100% facts. And like you said, I mean, we are not the people to criticize this film, but it's just very easy to criticize it, I think, in a sense. And like you said, I think it does try and have like good overall themes of like acceptance and more understanding, of what like the little people go through, even from a medical standpoint. Like I like a lot of that stuff, but just like the way they go about it a lot of times is really bad. Even like Kate Beckinsale's character at the beginning is kind of just like this ignorant person, and I like her arc of like learning a lot more about his family and how she can fit in with his family. And then like you said, I mean, the tonal shifts. An hour into the movie, they get married, and after that it's just like a completely different movie. I feel like her arc from the beginning to the hour mark I like, but then
I don't specifically know, but if I were to guess, it feels like the largest parts cut from this movie are in that last like 30 minutes. Like that last 30 minutes is so condensed. They jump around, like flash forward in time multiple times. Everything is just so strange, and it feels like we're just missing a lot of character depth and character moments.
It doesn't make any sense for Gary Oldman to be kind of this lead character when you have, I would argue this to T, when you have a better actor in Peter Dinklage right next to him, who has nothing at all to do in this film, and he would have been perfect for at least that role in a sense, I think, instead of going the Gary Oldman way. So that I don't understand at all. Like Peter Dinklage, he's awesome. I love him, obviously, and I've said that a ton before. But in this movie, he's just like this weird French guy who like gets it on with Patricia Arquette, which is fine. But I don't understand when you have like when you have an actor that caliber and you need a character to play a little person, why not just take the one right in front of you instead of making Gary Oldman do something very problematic and very likely offensive to a ton of people? So I don't understand that decision at all.
I can't, I guess, explain it. It was Gary Oldman. He wanted to be in this movie. Like the reason that Gary Oldman is the star of this movie is because, so I guess we can do a little back. So Matthew Bright, the director of this movie, wrote it when he was like 18. So like in the 70s originally. He was roommates with a man that you might be familiar with for his roles in James Bond, Hervé Villers. He was in the TV show Fantasy Island. He was also in The Man in the Golden Gun. He played Knick Knack in the 1974 James Bond. He's just one of the like probably earlier famous little people actors that kind of really made a name for themselves. And Matthew Bright, from the ages of like 18 to 25, kind of intermittently lived with this guy. He was like a roommate with him. And the Peter Dinklage character is really based upon Hervé and what he knew of him as a real person, and really just his interest in kind of the world of little people and just kind of like them as real human beings and having like real romantic relationships. All of that and that interest spans from him having Hervé as a roommate and kind of becoming good friends with him. And that's where this whole idea came from, this idea to write a comedy about a man, you know, who's twin brothers with a little person and kind of doesn't really fit in with his family. Then he like went on to do some music stuff and did some other movie stuff. He made some other movies that are like Freeway. And this movie just kind of got sold and optioned off to like various studios over the next like 3-4 decades, to where it was kind of just getting passed around from people to people. And at one point he got a call and they were like, oh my gosh, Gary Oldman read your script. He loves it. He wants to be in it. He wants to make it happen. And he was like, oh, which movie? Like, what is it? And they go, Tiptoes. And he was like, Tiptoes? It's like, I haven't even thought about that movie in literally like a decade. So weird that Gary Oldman wants to be in it. But if he wants to be the lead or he wants to play this role, and it's going to get made, like, I guess that's what we're going to do. And that's kind of, you know, how it came to be. I know Jeff Bridges was like attached at one point. I don't know if it was necessarily for that role or for the McConaughey role, like before Oldman was even attached. So it went through a lot of different hands, but it ended up, Oldman just loved the script so much, he wanted to be in it and he wanted to help produce it and make it happen.
Yeah, that is actually a pretty cool story too. And it's kind of weird to me that like the majority of these stars were drawn to this movie. And maybe that is testament to like the original scripts. You know, give me a bright cut, hashtag bright cut. I mean, you got five decently, you know, known actors and actresses in this movie. So, and it was direct to freaking DVD. So I don't know, man. I don't know how kind of Oldman got attached to this originally. I'm sure there's tons of backstory with that too, but that is cool. I wish that maybe this bright guy, like, you know, got the passion project of exactly what he wanted to release just so we could see that. I don't know if it'd be any different. Also, you mentioned off the top that this is a comedy. I didn't realize that, if I'm being completely honest. I guess I said dramedy off the bat too, but I feel like there's not a ton of comedy other than maybe like Dinklage's character, and Patricia Arquette is supposed to be fairly comedic. But if Dinklage is supposedly playing like his former roommate, which that's kind of a cool anecdote as well, I guess that gives him a reason to be in this movie. And this is kind of skipping ahead to my bad, I guess, a little bit, but I don't understand why Dinklage's character is in this film. He doesn't do anything. So I don't even understand his inclusion as a whole kind of in the film, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like, it was kind of a direct homage to this person. Now, he never told Peter Dinklage this, and I think funny enough, like Peter Dinklage went on to play Hervé like in real life, like in another movie, like about that guy's life. So it's kind of funny that he's kind of played the role almost twice without even maybe realizing it. But this guy was kind of violent and he was a French communist and he was kind of funny and all over the place. And he would literally, like Dinklage's character does in this movie, kind of just like pick fights with people randomly. And that wasn't necessarily the public persona he had that he had out there. So I think Bright was just really interested in who this guy really was as a person, like in real life. And he wanted to bring this person that he found kind of funny and unique and interesting in his real life into the movie world and kind of just, you know, add that depth of character as a fun supporting character that can provide some comedy. He talks about that he never, like, even when he went to Sundance, he like didn't actually watch the final cut of the movie. He saw different scenes and he like, after the fact, he saw parts of it, but he's never seen the full thing. So he says that like, even he doesn't know what was cut exactly, but he imagines some of that comedy of the Maurice character and the reasons he was there was really cut out as well.
Gotcha. That's funny too. He probably never made it like all the way through just because he was so angry, like at the beginning. He's like, they cut this, they cut that. He kept probably just like walking in and out of the theater, just storming around. So
well, we can talk IMDB Known For now.
Do I know you? I mean, where do I know you from?
Go ahead and get into it. We'll start with the writer-director Matthew Bright. Now, even just interestingly enough, I don't know if you paid attention on the credits of this movie. He's credited as the director, but the writer is actually credited under the name Bill Weimer, but that is just Matthew Bright. And the whole reason was he literally hated the final product of this movie so much. He requested that his name was removed from the screenplay. They did. He requested his name was taken off from directing it, but they wouldn't purely because he wasn't a DGA member. So he was a WGA member, which gave him basically union rights to remove his name as the screenwriter. But since he wasn't a member of the Directors Guild, he had no right to remove his name as the director. So it still sticks on there. Matthew Bright, director of Tiptoes.
That is tough. But other than Tiptoes, I don't think I know him from anything else. Obviously, he's known for is kind of all over the place, but do you know any other Matthew Bright projects really here?
I personally am not really familiar with them at all. The four that are listed here, Freeway, Ted Bundy, Forbidden Zone, and Tiptoes. I think Freeway is another like kind of comedy movie that some people kind of enjoy. It's got Reese Witherspoon and Kiefer Sutherland in it, you know. I don't know. He literally, there's another movie on here, which is Tomb of Terror, which it's 2004. It's video. He's listed as one of the writers. But besides that, Tiptoes is his last film credit.
That is wild too. And it's funny too. Like you said, I mean, his writer credit is under Bill Weiner. So I feel like that's poetic as well as like one of his last credits ever is Bill Weiner. But yeah, interesting IMDb. I don't think I have ever been down the Matthew Bright rabbit hole. So funny enough. Also, his pictures is really great too.
Yeah, I mean, it's an old one. Like I said, he hasn't worked in the industry for the past 20 years. When I was listening to this interview, he's basically kind of just been doing his own thing, playing music. Like he lived in a bunch of different places. He's moved to like Myanmar and Brazil, and he's I don't know, he's an interesting guy. He seemed to have been doing okay for himself after the fact. He talked about both because of the experiences on this film and the way he approached things at Sundance are kind of it's twofold. It's one, he hated the industry so much and the way that he was treated and the way things went on this movie. He didn't want to make movies anymore. And then also he did something that was pretty, you know, out there and basically trashing his own film that would cause him to probably not get another job for a while following the movie.
I mean, I would assume that's, you know, fairly frowned upon in the industry, and studios would look at that with, you know, a big kind of red flag, I would think. So I think you're right. It's definitely a combination of both. He probably wasn't interested in doing too much after this, but at the same time, there was probably like a big X on his back after that happened as well, I would think.
All right, moving on to, we'll do this in billing order, which I think is interesting. So first, Lee billed Gary Oldman, his four that he is known for: The Dark Knight, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Darkest Hour, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. Obviously, Darkest Hour, he wins an Oscar for. It's got to be on there. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, another Oscar-winning film at the very least. And then, of course, The Dark Knight. I think Bram Stoker's Dracula is the one that maybe surprises me the most, coming in at number 4.
I agree. Obviously, I'm not the biggest horror guy, but I think it's a very good list.
That is a Francis Ford Coppola movie, right?
I believe so. Yeah. Which I haven't seen, but shout out. That is maybe one to put on the list because obviously Coppola's pretty great. Yeah, Dark Knight. I mean, he's not really the lead in it, I feel like, in a sense. So the big two, I think, for me are Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Darkest Hour. I actually do like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy a good amount. I feel like probably out of those two performances, I would say that's the one I would lean to as my favorite of his. But he's been in so much too. I mean, his IMDb, I feel like is insane just because the amount of credits. Is there anything that like stands out to you as something that should be on here?
The big thing to me that I feel like, just especially like our generation and then the one right above us that would really know Gary Oldman, is Harry Potter. And while he's not a big role whatsoever and he's only in 4 movies, to me that is like, Sirius Black is such an iconic role for him. I would put it in as the 4th one.
For me, and I mean, this is just my brain, I go to like Air Force One, where he plays a really funny like Russian villain, or like The Fifth Element, where he plays like this crazy guy too. So I always think of him like as just an absolute chameleon. Like you can literally give him any sort of role and he'll probably be pretty decent in it. But he's been acting forever, obviously, and probably everybody has a little bit different, stuff of what they know of Gary Oldman. Hopefully nobody has anything, Tiptoes related, but like looking at his IMDb, this credit, it does make a lot of sense, kind of looking at his overall, because I feel like he'll pretty much
he likes to make movies. Yeah, that's the thing. He's been in a lot of bad stuff. This might be the lowest rated one, but I'm seeing another one 2 years later that's got a 4.5. So it's like he's all over the place with some bad movies. So I completely get it.
Yeah.
I feel like he plays a lot of real life people. He's done that quite a few times. So the history. He's a guy that makes sense at an age before the cell phone existed. He really just fits well into period pieces.
Yeah. Also, another weird one. Shout out Dawn of the Planet of the Apes as well, where he's like the human leader. I think he's really good in that. Love that movie. But yeah, like you said, I mean, he's a big biopic guy too. JFK, I think he's pretty good as well. Anything I think Oliver Stone related, he's probably attached somewhere in it. But yeah, well, I do really like me some Gary Oldman. I wish he wasn't so problematic in this film.
All right, let's move on to the next build person, which is Kate Beckinsale. I mean, her four here are Underworld Evolution, Underworld, Van Helsing, and Vacancy. Where do you know Kate Beckinsale from? Anywhere? Are you a big Beckinsale head at all?
I don't really think so. I knew she was like the star of the Underworld franchise, so that would be, I think, my thing of where I would place her at. Is she in?
Have you seen any of those Underworld?
I've not, but I've seen like the trailers and stuff. Okay, and she was in like the rebooted Total Recall. I hadn't seen that. I generally The Aviator. Okay, she was in that, so I've seen one of her films, I believe. That may be the only movie I've ever seen that she's in. I think she's actually not a terrible actress. I guess spoiler alert for my good a little bit, but I don't know. This top four definitely makes sense. Other than Van Helsing, I guess. I don't know who remembers that film either, but yeah.
Well, I think she's a person that maybe even it's because of I guess it's probably because of the first Underworld movie, and then she does Van Helsing the year after. I feel like that really got her trapped into a world. I mean, she's made like how many Underworld movies? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Underworld movies over the last 20 years. She's kind of been typecast into that world. Then you also get the Elder Scrolls Online, where she's kind of like those type of things, or it's just like real genre pieces. And then when she tries to do like a rom-com, it's this fucking movie, which is just I don't know what she's doing in this movie, but we'll talk about that further. So she's an interesting one to me. I definitely know her from Underworld. My mom is a big Underworld fan, existing in the vampire werewolf craze of the early 2000s. They're okay. They're fine movies.
I have no idea what they're even about, if I'm completely honest.
She is a vampire, and it's like a war between vampires and werewolves.
Sick.
But it's kind of like she's got like guns, and she's like shooting. Like it's kind of like I don't even know I don't know what the way to describe it. Like maybe even like kind of like in the comic booky craze of like the vampires. It's like really violent and hyper stylized.
Like Dread and
like in that world, I would say. For sure.
Like the Matrix kind of with vampires.
Yeah, and like a less fun Blade. Like
I was thinking Blade too. Yeah, just like the poster reminds me of Blade, I feel like. But also too, I'm surprised that she is billed second here. What year was this movie released? I don't even know.
Well, that is the interesting thing, because she is second billed. However, Patricia Arquette, who is third, she gets a with credit. So it's Gary Oldman, Kate Beckinsale, with Patricia Arquette, who is our third person. Patricia Arquette, her four that she's known for: True Romance, Boyhood, Medium, and Stigmata. Boyhood, obviously, she wins the Oscar for in 2014. I feel like Medium, I never really watched it, but I've seen some episodes when it was on from 2005 to 2011. That's at least where I most recognize her from.
Really? I figured you'd recognize her from something else.
Well, I didn't want to jump it. Obviously, Holes as well. Couldn't stop thinking about kissing Kate Barlow throughout the entire movie. But
and I did just double check because I know those were pretty close release. Yeah, Tiptoes was in 2002. Holes was her next project in 2003. So shout out Patricia Arquette. That's a rebound if I've ever seen one, because I think she actually is good in Holes, and she has nothing to do in this film. But yeah, I do think probably out of everyone we've talked about, other than, well, I don't know. I'd just say she's definitely a better actress than Kate Beckinsale, but I like Patricia Arquette a lot. I think she is a really good actress. That performance in Boyhood, obviously an Oscar winner, and I think for good reason.
They kind of just said you spent the last 20 years of your life doing this. I guess we'll give you an Oscar. But
yeah, they weren't going to give one to Ethan Hawke, so they had to give one to somebody. But yeah,
think about that. She was filming Boyhood whilst Tiptoes happened. Tiptoes happened in the middle of Boyhood.
that is gross to think about. But yeah, I don't know anything about Medium if I'm being honest either. I guess she's a medium and she's solving crimes. That would be my guess. Haven't seen True Romance either. But it's pretty highly rated, so might have checked that out. But I think get Patricia more roles these days, I would say. She's been working for forever, obviously, so she probably doesn't want to tackle too much, but I really like the super dramatic stuff from her. So Oscar bait. Give me more Oscar bait, I think, for Miss Arquette.
Yeah, I know she's been most recently in Severance, the Apple TV
Oh, okay.
show. So
I still haven't checked that
she's in
out.
all the episodes of that. So
Nice.
she's working, hanging out. Moving on to Matthew McConaughey, who gets the and credit. So we get with Patricia Arquette and Matthew McConaughey.
I didn't even notice
Fourth
that.
build here. His four he's known for: Interstellar, Dallas Buyers Club, Mud, Magic Mike. Obviously wins the Oscar for the Dallas Buyers Club. All of these movies are from 2012 to 2014, which I think most people deem them a renaissance. I mean, do you think it's kind of unfair that we're only looking at this like 2-year span of his known for? I feel like McConaughey's done way more.
He has done a ton more. And personally, I would swap out at least one of his older things, I think, onto this top four. I think
gotta give him like a How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or a Failure to Launch or something, The Wedding Planner, something like that.
There's got to be one rom-com, I think. But me personally, I'd throw in Contact as well. That's a great film. I mean, you could go on and on and on, but he's been in so much. Like We Are Marshall, I think, deserves more credit.
That's also fair. I mean, for early stuff, yeah.
But regardless, I mean, Interstellar and Dallas Buyers Club, I mean, those are his two best performances, I think. So I think those are kind of no-brainers. The other two, Mud, I haven't seen Mud, actually.
Mud is weird to me on here.
Yeah.
I would almost switch that out with something. Maybe if you want to go something more modern, The Gentleman. I mean, even it sucks because it's also in that time span, but like to me, The Wolf of Wall Street is such a heat check performance and something that I feel like he's so known for. If you want to go two leads, Interstellar, Dallas Buyers Club, and then two supporting, Magic Mike, Wolf of Wall Street, makes a lot of sense.
I mean, how is True Detective not in here? If we're including TV, like I would replace that with Magic Mike in an instant. So that confuses me as well. But like I said, I feel like you should throw in at least one rom-com in here just to, give the overall presence of who McConaughey is in Hollywood. But I think they got it mostly right, which is more than a lot of other pages. So shout out to him.
The Magic Mike role is small in the impact it has in the actual plot of the film, but it is incredibly memorable in the scope of the entire film. And what McConaughey does, especially in that time when it's like that movie really, I think, set off everything. Then you get Wolf of Wall Street the next year, and Dallas Buyers Club, and Interstellar the year after. Like, this is really the start of it, of like, oh shit, Matthew McConaughey is hot shit, right?
Also, what about Dazed and Confused, dude? That may be his like most iconic performance, honestly. That's probably the one people remember most these days, I would say. So, all right. I keep getting older, but
maybe that's just because the girl's staying the same age. That's why I can't be on the top four.
Same thing with like Wolf of Wall Street, though. Like, I feel like that's a performance that people really remember him from, just because it's like quotable and iconic in a sense. So I feel like IMDb should take that into account a little bit more. Yeah. So I don't know who quotes Magic Mike these days. I don't know anybody. But...
They quote it with their bodies, Kody. I'll tell you.
Fair enough.
Do just want to say 3 of the 4 people we just talked about, Oscar winners, which is crazy in the scope of this film. And then you throw Peter Dinklage in there as well. He's an Emmy winner. So
love me some Dink. Shout out Game of Thrones, baby. Also, Days of Future Past, X-Men. Hell of a film.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. We're starting with the good. We won't spend much time there, but Kody, take it away. What do you think, man?
And honestly, most of my good has already been touched on. It's a decent cast, like we said. I mean, 3 out of 4 of the main build are Oscar winners. Not too bad, not too shabby. Shout out to the casting director. Seems like pretty much the only person behind the scenes that was doing their job. So I'm proud of them. Like I was saying before, too, I mean, the overall themes of acceptance, I think, is good. I think the ideology is there. Just kind of the kind of actions of the film, I don't like at all. And then lastly, I already mentioned too, Peter Dinklage is the man. I don't love his French accent, but I think he's really good. He's really good in everything, and he deserves a lot more than this role in Tiptoes. So he's definitely in my good. That's pretty much everything on my list, if I'm being honest. So I'll definitely throw it over to you.
Dinklage was definitely my main thing, and I think especially like with that context of him playing like the Hervé Villechaize guy, and kind of just like wishing to see his role expanded. I know he's a big proponent of the original cut of the movie versus the cut that was released, and I think he is definitely a bright spot in this movie that has not many. And then just beyond that, like you said, the family stuff, the convention, like the Little Peoples of America stuff, like I think that's really interesting. It's like a world that I wasn't even really fully aware of, and definitely a world that had never been, approached in film in the same way prior to this. And, like you said, all the ideas of like, hey, there are some real health concerns that go into like having dwarfism as a condition, and like here are the pains that these people have to live with, and kind of just like the struggles of everyday life that do not necessarily hinder them from still being functioning, happy, productive members of society, like they say. I think all of his family and like McConaughey's interactions with them in person are really sweet, and like the ways that they all kind of fit together, and just like all that stuff is great. Now, when you get into like the way McConaughey moves on beyond that, it's really obviously ugly and bad, but that's less about the movie and about his character itself. But in general, I think the family dynamic is really cool. And if that was like the focus of this movie, I think it becomes a much more interesting and better movie. And you don't do all the weird love triangle, strange tonal sex stuff that is just really strange. On top of that, Matthew McConaughey, it's probably one of the hottest I think he's ever looked on film. So we got to give him a shout out there. Just an incredible bod from McConaughey in this movie. It's crazy. And I will say that it is literally the only reason that we are supposed to like his character. They give us nothing. There's no character moment. There's no save the cat moment to be like, we should root for this guy, other than he's attractive. So that's bad, but at least he is attractive. So they're successful.
Hey, that should be enough, man. What else do you need? Yeah.
True. So that's all we need. Just a hot guy. He's innocent. He's hot and innocent. Moving over to the bad, though, I'm sure we have a lot to talk about here.
Oh, yeah.
I think editing as a whole is probably a good place to start. The music is really strange at different points. I just think like the vibe is so off. There's a phone call that really is off-putting between Beckinsale and McConaughey.
Oh yeah,
it's shot like super close on her face and her lips, and it's like super sexual and weird. And then he's just in a field, like it's the middle of the night, and he's just like out in a field talking on the phone. It's the strangest like back and forth cutting. And then at the end of the conversation, he like hangs up and tosses his phone into the ether. So like that scene is really strange. When he shows up to the party, the vibe is just so off and weird, because he's like acting like he's mad at her, and he invites these girls to the party, and then she shows up and it's just, oh, hey, we're having fun. It's a party. So just like moments like that throughout the movie just keep popping up, where it's like, this should be a serious scenario, or this should be like an emotional moment. And it's like, we played just super weird because it was clearly cut up to pieces.
Funny enough, that specific phone call scene was the top of my list of what is going on in this scene. Like you said, I mean, it's an extreme zoom on her face, and she's doing like this weird like ASMR voice, like on a phone call with Matthew McConaughey. Be like, oh, you want to go to the party? What's going on? And then, like you said, he chucks his phone after the conversation, and then like two girls just walk out of the woods, and he's like, hey, you want to go to a party?
The whole thing is that he's a firefighter or whatever, but it's supposed to be that he's like away. Like, wasn't she like, oh, he's away for a week at this like fire boot camp, but then he's going to show up to this party? It's all over the place.
It's strange. Another weird, just like tonal moment I wanted to talk about too was, I talked about that hour mark where they get married. I think it's like 15 minutes later, because there's only a half hour left. So it's like the climax of like the third act in a sense, I guess. But it's like there's a massive dramatic moments where she just wants him to go see a shrink to deal with his mental problems. And he like starts freaking out. He's like, I'm not going to do that. What are you talking about? And it's just like they make this like really melodramatic thing about like, just go see a shrink because obviously you have problems about, you won't even tell me your family's little people.
Well, that's the thing. This is the quote that she says to him. She goes, I really think you're ambivalent about your family being little people. And
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not ambivalent about that. And he like just loses the shit and he punches a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
Talk about men will literally do anything and they go to therapy, but come on, McConaughey.
Yeah. The wall punch, that might be my favorite scene in the movie, honestly. I should have brought that up and good, but it doesn't make any sense in the context of the film. But Matthew McConaughey just gets to be a psycho for a second. So I think that's pretty cool. Past that, another weird moment. Like the writing, I think, is just really off. In the editing, I think 100%, and it's obviously chopped up a ton. But when the parents meet, which is kind of like an awkward, that's a little bit more comedy based, I think. Because there's like fun hijinks of like,
it's supposed to like feel like a stressful situation, and then it's supposed to like resolve comedically. However, it's just played so strangely, even the resolution doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like really intense because Kate Beckinsale thinks like her mom's gonna be like, oh, we don't like little people or something. But then it's just like it's building up tension probably for like 5 minutes straight. Like, oh no, she's gonna say something bad. And then she's like, oh, do you guys have a problem with the Jewish wedding? And I was just like, that's the punchline to this like 10-minute buildup. So I don't really like that scene either. But like we were saying, I mean, it's chopped up like crazy. And the director, I don't know, tonality thing was different from what he expected there, but I don't really like that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk a little bit more about the editing. So essentially, specifically what happened was the director had his cut of the movie. He turned it into the studio, particularly the producers of this film. There's a man named John Langley, who is most notably known for his work on the TV show Cops. And he was the guy who, along with like Gary Oldman's interest, kind of was the main lead producer that made this movie happen. He was the guy who took it to Sundance in his private jet and was like ready to sell it to people, and then was obviously disappointed when Bright showed up and trashed it. But when they turned it over to him, they hated it. They were like, oh, this isn't what we were expecting. He passed it over to his wife to like basically re-edit it. And that's where like it turns into kind of like this weird sentimental seeming movie at different points. And you get the really strange tonality and vibes coming from that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting as well. But yeah, really weird kind of just adventure this edit has gone along, it seems like. So that's cool.
What the director says leads to a lot of the original contempt between himself and John Langley that kind of like screwed up their working relationship early on in production, and then was kind of just throughout all the way to post, it was ruined. Was Kate Beckinsale in this movie wears a hat, as you can see, and it is fucking stupid, right? It kind of looks ridiculous, right? The reason she wears this hat in the movie is because when they're trying to get different people to be in the movie, Matthew Bright's talking to Kate Beckinsale, and he's like, hey, we really want you to be in the movie, but like everyone has to take a SAG minimum. There's no budget. Like you're just going to be paid minimum wage, which like SAG minimum isn't minimum wage, but it's, you're going to be paid the minimum amount we can pay you, right? And she said, I will do the movie for minimum if I get to wear my lucky hat. And he said, 100%. I don't care. Like you're Kate Beckinsale, like you're going to be in my movie that, like I'm not a huge guy. Like, sure, we'll get Kate Beckinsale. We'll do it for the minimum. She shows up on set. She's wearing this hat in the first scene that she's shooting. John Langley and his wife go, what the fuck is that hat? Take that off her. That cannot be in this movie. We will not pay for this movie if she's wearing that hat. And he's like, no, like she agreed to be in this movie if she could just like wear this hat. And they're like, no, you need to tell her to take it off. He's like, she literally will not be in the movie if she takes it off. He's like, I'm the director of this movie. Like, it's my decision, right? And they're like, yeah, but she needs to take the hat off. And he's like, well, I'm going to make the decision. She's going to keep the hat because that's what'll keep her in the movie. And like that there was like the initial rift in their relationship that just caused problems throughout the entire production of this film. Obviously, it is a stupid hat, but I think it's just kind of funny. The lucky hat had to make it. I think Kate Beckinsale, I mean, you look at the hat she's wearing in your background right now, and her outfits throughout this entire movie are so strange and really out there. Obviously, she's trying to play an artist. So like there's kind of like a funky, like weird artsy vibe to her. But man, she's got some weird fits, some bad early 2000s outfits.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it is definitely having to do with the time period. I don't know what they were wearing in the early 2000s, to be honest, but the lucky hat, I respect it. I probably wouldn't wear it if I'm being completely honest. And I think it only appears in that, obviously, the scene where she goes and confronts him at Matthew McConaughey's work, but Does it appear any other time? I don't think it does.
I don't think so.
Fair enough. Well, shout out to Kate Beckinsale. You gotta do what you gotta do to get on Tiptoes. Oh, and on the topic of Kate Beckinsale too, I wanted to bring up one thing that really stood out about her performance. It's her ability to fake cry about as bad as I've ever seen anybody. She just like puts her hands on her face. She doesn't even make any noises. She just puts her hands there, and then somebody goes, "Oh, it's okay," and then she goes, "No, it's not." Like there's no fake tears. I guess that wasn't in the budget either, but like, come on, you got to do a little better than that, I think.
Yeah, not the best fake crying ever. I want to address. Obviously, we've already said it's problematic, but the Gary Oldman like little person nature of it all, just like being bad filmmaking. Like it doesn't look good. He's walking around on his knees. When he sits on the couch, they've got like fake legs sticking out, and he's like built into the couch. And like, there's some interesting technical things they did to make it happen, but overall, I just think it looks bad throughout the use of the movie. And it's like if you're gonna do this, at least like try a little bit harder than just like having him walk around on his knees. I don't know.
They did some like creative stuff, but it's just not executed well at all, I don't think. And it does look pretty bad overall. And I guess kind of on that topic too,
it just takes you out of the movie, I think.
100% every time. And they do it so often of like him like walking around like.
Well, and even like it's stupid. Like in the movie, like he's driving that dumb 3-wheeled bicycle because like it allows them to. Like,
it's easier
to edit
to
it
film.
that way. Yeah,
100%. And I don't know how we've gone this far and not talked about Gary Oldman and Kate Beckinsale's relationship. But I'm at a loss, Korbin. I have no idea. There were kind of a little bit of sparks in the beginning, but I also think it's like it doesn't make sense because it's just like crazy unethical of like, obviously it's brothers, that's kind of weird. And then it's like a quick turnaround from the relationship. And like even on her wedding day, she like goes and like kisses Gary Oldman before he's gonna leave. I don't know. I don't really understand any of it.
Yeah, so like I don't think they do a good job of like building any sort of like flirtatious relationship between them throughout. Like they attempt to. It really just seems like Gary Oldman is just like smitten with her the entire time, and like he calls her beautiful and like says stuff like that, but she doesn't really seem to show like a romantic interest in him until the very end, which is really strange. I think the ending as a whole is just absolutely abhorrent. Obviously, you've got the strange editing where it's like they get married, then she has the baby, then they jump forward 10 months forward to that. The baby's 10 months old. McConaughey just is like, that's it, I'm done being a dad. So then she runs off to the woods to be with Gary Oldman. And even then, it's not necessarily that it's like a romantic relationship. It's more of just like, hey, like, I need help taking care of this kid. You're his uncle. Will you like give me a place to stay? And then it jumps forward like a couple more times through their like them spending time there. I'm not really sure how long it's been. McConaughey shows up at the house, and then he's basically just like, fuck it, whatever. You guys are happy. And he like looks at Gary Oldman and he's like, love my son. And then he leaves. And it's like, what the fuck? And then of course the movie ends with Beckinsale and Oldman leaning in for a kiss. Just absolutely all over the place.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, from where we started to where we ended, it's just completely flipping like who is the love interest in a sense. Which, if you're gonna do that, I think you need a lot more build up to that than just like the last 15 or 5 minutes.
Gary Oldman's got his girlfriend or whatever that he's like interested for the whole like first hour of the movie until we never see her again. Like, until the wedding, and they're like, oh yeah, she's gone.
Yeah, strange character development and very strange relationship. I think to end it off that well.
Let's head over to the ugly. I've got some ugly as well. First one, I'll say Kate Beckinsale is a mom. She's not great as a mother, mainly because you really shouldn't drink alcohol and breastfeed. They literally make a comment about it where they're like, hey, does your baby get drunk when you drink and then breastfeed? And she's like, oh, of course not. But like scientifically, you really shouldn't be doing that, Kate. So that wasn't great. And then this wasn't so much her, but just kind of like another thing that goes with like the suspension of disbelief beyond like Oldman not being a real little person. When she's like pregnant, she like runs through a parking lot at full
Oh,
speed
yeah.
with flip-flops on, and it's just like, what the fuck, in a wedding dress, mind you. So it's like there's three things going on here that just do not make any sense. Clearly you're not pregnant right now.
Yeah, I think that is very impressive that she's able to do that. Shout out Miss Beckinsale. Yeah, to piggyback a little bit too, I mean, Gary Oldman practical makeup, I had it in this category, just complete shite. Like you said, I think most of the effects, and and the thing is too, like you wouldn't expect a movie like this to need a lot of practical effects, but it does, and they're all very bad. So I think that's obviously very ugly. And then my other two pretty much just stem around Mr. McConaughey. I mentioned this a little bit, but why doesn't he just tell her that his family is little people? Like, I don't understand. This guy's got some serious mental issues that haven't been touched for 30 years, I guess, until this very moment. But I would think that this guy's had girlfriends before, and like, they've gone to the stages where like they're meeting each other's parents. I feel like that's not that crazy. So I don't know. I don't know how this has never happened before with, like you said, like one of the most attractive people probably on the planet. So I don't understand that. And then just to double down on McConaughey as well, what's up with this dancing in this movie, dude? I think
I wanted to at the convention. He breaks out
he's out
some
there,
moves that
he's
are
out there dancing
insane.
with his sisters, but all he's doing is just like shaking his ass around, and I don't really understand it. That may be the clip of the week on YouTube, but yeah, it's bad. It's no bueno. So I had to shout out that in ugly as well.
I didn't know where to bring it up, but I knew it had to get mentioned. I appreciate you shouting it out. Just the weirdest moves I've ever seen. It's if this movie wasn't like so underseen, I feel like that clip of McConaughey would become like, like when before Purdue games when they show like everybody dancing in movies and you get like the obviously everyone knows the Leo and the Wolf of Wall Street, but I feel like the McConaughey dancing in the scene, like that should get used in compilations right over. Like why are we not seeing more of McConaughey dancing?
That should be an iconic clip, but maybe we'll have to bring it back. Hey, go follow us on TikTok, and you might see some McConaughey dancing clips.
McConaughey edits of from Tiptoes. I also want to say along with, I mean, the McConaughey thing clearly is a man who needs therapy, but it's like really like deep-seated issues where it's like on the surface he seems fine, he's communicative, he's happy with his family, he's able to hang out with them, but then like he just has this intense shame that obviously prevents him from sharing with the woman who he's literally marrying in a couple months, that his family is all little people.
I think he's got some deep-seated issues, like you said. And I mean, he went to the therapist, did not seem to help out too much, so probably a lot of wasted money there. But yeah, he's got some big time issues, I think.
And then the other thing that I wanted to say for ugly stuff is the character of Adrisi, which I think is really strange and kind of like a weird, just like inclusion of this character moment. So Oldman shows up to his ex-girlfriend's house, Kitty, and she's like there, and she's got this boyfriend who she says is a refugee from the Gaza Strip. And then he just shows up and beats the shit out of Gary Oldman. And to me, it's like really strange because it's like, this is 2002. It's like a really weird time for Islamophobia. And like, it's just like it doesn't need to be in there where it's like, you're going to have this Muslim character who just like shows up and beats the shit out of both Oldman and the girl. And then like is literally only there for that one scene to just like be an asshole. It's like, it doesn't really need to be in there for me.
Honestly, I forgot that even happened in the movie, but yeah, I agree. I think that definitely deserves to be in this category for a couple of reasons. Like I said, I mean, just topical for the times, not the best. And then I think he shoves Gary Oldman down and then jumps on top of him, and then his girl tries to come out, and he just starts swinging at her too. Brutal stuff on.
And then Oldman's like, I'm leaving. Like, just the way that whole scene is played is so strange because he's like, I'm leaving. You can talk to the cops. Like, it's weird.
That's early on in the film. I feel like that is probably the most forgettable scene, honestly. Like, if that was never mentioned again, I would have completely forgot that was in the film.
Well, and then, like, he's back with that girl, but then she's having sex with Jerry Robin Jr., which they just make as, like, a one-off comment. It's all over the place. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. At this point in the pod, I'd just like to say, if you're enjoying the episode, give us a follow at KHAP Podcast. Go rate us on Spotify, like us on YouTube, subscribe, just everything. Give us some love, guys. We had to sit through this movie, and we'd appreciate some Love on the socials.
Likes and comments everywhere. Go comment on the Rough Cut retrospective as well. Tell them this movie sucks. But yeah, I got to show some love for going all out here.
Invite, fight, night.
Totally invite your personal friend, Spider-Man.
I want to fight you. Hans. Bobby. I'm your white knight.
Let's start with invite. I kind of just mentioned him. I want to get Jerry Robin Jr., the character.
Oh,
Clearly,
okay.
I don't know what he is or who he is, but apparently he's like a famous guy that also goes to these little people conventions for some reason. I want to know what he's famous for. He seems like maybe he's a musician, maybe he's like a business. I don't know. Let's get him on the pod and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I like that underrated pick there. He just gives off like musician vibes, I think, a little bit. So I like that a lot. My pick, it could only be one man. It's the Dig Man. Sure, we can bring on his French character, I guess. I don't really care, but Peter Dinklage needs to come on the pod. I think it's the obvious choice, and yeah, I mean, we can have Patricia Arquette, I guess, as well on. I do like their bickering at the end too. I think it brings a different flavor of their relationship. But he also might just be like screaming in pain the entire time because it seems like he does have some pretty bad medical issues that he doesn't want any help for. So I think just from an audio standpoint, that'd kind of be interesting too. Like every 10 minutes, this guy is just like turning the other way from his mic and like screaming in pain. So character-wise, I think it'd be fun. And how can you go wrong with the Dink Man?
I like that a lot. I did have one other pick for invite, and it was Uncle Bobby. He's played by Ed Gale. We could either get Ed Gale or the character of Uncle Bobby on. Either of them. Uncle Bobby, within the context of the film, he's like the head of this convention, and I think there's a lot of insights and things we could talk to him about. We could get his opinions on this movie being made and whether Gary Oldman should have or should not have walked around on his knees. And then on top of that, if you want to go for the actor Ed Gale, I mean, this dude has been in so many movies. I know Spaceballs is a huge one for you. He played Dink.
Oh, yeah.
He played Howard the Duck in the original Howard the Duck movie. He was in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He's in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I mean, he's been all over the place. He's appeared in so many different work. He's worked with a ton of different people. So I'm sure we could have a lot of. He was in Chucky. He played Chucky. I'm pretty sure. So we could get a lot of insights from Ed Gale.
Yeah, he's been in a lot too. That's awesome. I back that too. Another good pick.
All right, moving over to fight. I gotta fight Maurice. The guy wants. He's always asking for it. So Peter Dinklage is coming at me. I'll give him a little 1-4. Well, hand-to-hand combat.
I don't think you could take the Dink Man.
I wouldn't fight Dinklage. I would fight Maurice.
What
Just
did Maurice do? Why you want to fight him?
He's trying to fight everybody. That's kind of a shtick. I think he wants to.
He's got it coming. All right, fair enough. You convince me. For me, I mean, there's so many options in this film. I don't think there is a wrong answer in a sense. I'm going to pick out a few people here, but first off, I'm going after McConaughey. I mean, he literally abandoned his newborn child just because, they have like a medical condition, basically. Pretty messed up and brutal. So I don't know how he didn't get punched in this movie, honestly. I thought at the end Gary Oldman was going to give him one, but it never came. And then, talking about them too, I want Gary Oldman and Beckinsale both to get decked in the face. This weird relationship I'm not a big fan of, and it's kind of going behind McConaughey's back at the same time, even though he probably deserves it. But I think they deserve a stick in the face. I mean, Gary Oldman as well, just for the brutality of everything he did in this movie and all the offensive stuff. So kind of double down on him maybe as well.
Yeah, I think they're all deserving of a little. You can maybe just line them up. Bam, bam, bam.
Can't argue against that. Really.
It's just like everybody's deserving. I also wanted to shout out Idrisi. I already mentioned him, but the guy does just come in and beat the shit out of Oldman and his girlfriend Kody. So he can take a punch as well.
Yeah, I back that as well.
Moving over to Night. This is maybe a little bit of a surprise one. You might even forget this character. It is Chuck. Do you remember Chuck from early in the film, Kody? Plays a big role.
Chuck from early in the film. You're going to have to enlighten me because I did not remember.
So Chuck is the guy that Matthew McConaughey is absolutely laying into at the firefighter training program.
Great pick. Wow.
McConaughey, he finds out Beckinsale's pregnant the night before, so that just like sends him on an absolute tirade. I got a couple quotes for you. He goes, "Come on, fat boy. Didn't I tell you to lose some of that blubber months ago?" And then he goes, "Your execution is piss poor. Not only are you slow, you suck at it." And then like one of his coworkers walks up to him and is like, dude, why are you being such an asshole? And he's like, take 5, Chuck. So I just wanted to knight Chuck. He really just gets a lot of hate from McConaughey for no reason.
That's a great pick. I think that's a very deserved knight. I completely forgot about Chuck as well, but he went through the ringer, man. McConaughey was brutal as a sort of fire instructor in a sense, but he did get called an asshole. That seems actually not terrible either. But yeah, Chuck, I think we need more screen time. He should have gotten at least a line or two, I think, coming back at McConaughey.
McConaughey providing bad firefighter representation. I hate to see it.
True. Yeah. Just another bad look for this movie. But cool. And honestly, dude, like I had a tough time coming up with a night here. Because like I said, I mean, I pretty much wanted to punch everybody. And when I was going through that list, when I got to night, I was like, wow, I don't really have too many names left. So I ended up going with Patricia Arquette's character. And just her in general, I guess, too, for just doing this movie. I think I don't out of like all the roles, hers was definitely the worst for kind of how big of a name I think she is in general. So I guess shout out to her. But other than like, you know, making out with Dinkman, she doesn't have too much to do in the film. And I respect that. So I'm gonna knight Patricia Arquette.
Yeah, her character, I mean, I guess like her role is probably the most fun. Like she just gets to kind of like show up and be a hippie and kind of like do whatever and like
doesn't really have any plot
make comments about crazy truck drivers that are having sex with transsexual prostitutes and getting called an alien walk-in, which also, what does that mean? She says that. She goes, my ex-boyfriend called me an alien walk-in. She says walk-in. Was she saying like aliens fuck her or like she's an alien that's I don't understand. Like, can you, I tried to look it up. I have no understanding whatsoever what an alien walk-in is.
Nothing on Urban Dictionary. I'm surprised. I would assume just from the context that it is like she's easy basically, and her boyfriend was just calling her like oh basically before. I don't know. I might have to go directly to the writer room on that. Mr. Wiener, shout out. But yeah, she also does just beat the crap out of the hotel attendant at the beginning of the film too, just because you know he was kind of being an asshole. So I think a knight is deserved for that as well.
Yeah, I mean he was just trying to get that extra pay for that day at the he's trying to run a hotel.
They definitely stayed way over what they're, you know.
Dinklage was gonna shoot him, so it could have been worse, I guess. Better she fights.
She prevented murder at least, I guess. So yeah.
Let's go over to the recast.
Bond. James Bond. My name's Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
You mentioned it like in the first 5 minutes of this episode, Kody, but it's pretty obvious they should have just had Peter Dinklage playing Gary Oldman's role, mainly just for the fact that him and fucking Matthew McConaughey are like actually the same age. They're only 5 months apart in age. They seem similar. Gary Oldman is like 12 years older than him. Doesn't even make sense to be playing his twin.
They're supposed to be twins too. I forgot about that. They do not look like twins.
I'm going to be honest, I thought Oldman was his dad in like the first 15 minutes of this movie. And then I realized, wait, they're brothers? And then it's like, wait, they're twins? What?
Doesn't make any sense. But I agree. That honestly was the first thing on my list as well. It pretty much just like solves a lot of the just kind of societal issues the movie deals with, I think a lot too. Just eliminating Oldman from that role is the smart move from an acting perspective. And just from like an ethics perspective. So I think that's an easy recast. Past that, I'll jump into I have a couple picks for replacing McConaughey, and I want to hear your thoughts on them. But I don't think McConaughey is very good in this movie at all, if I'm being honest. And my picks, they kind of go different directions with the film, because kind of that tonality thing, like you're saying. I think if you want to keep it like intense, sort of similar to that phone call scene, I guess, if we want to keep that in. What if we went like Christian Bale, like Willem Dafoe, sort of that side of things? Or if we went more like comedy based, because this is supposed to be a comedy, evidently, a little like Will Ferrell action, I think would almost be perfect in this cast. But I guess, which one would you like prefer? Would you prefer like a comedy side or more of like a darker side?
I mean, that's the problem, because it's like, I don't really know if this movie should be a straight comedy either, because I don't necessarily know if that makes it better, right? Like,
it definitely doesn't.
Will Ferrell, I think this is probably a worse movie. Like, I don't think it's a better movie.
No,
but
way. No,
I don't know.
It's a worse movie.
Because then it's like, I almost, because I don't want it to be like you go too far into comedy and it's like you start to make fun of the people that are in the movie. Like, right? Like it's a fine line of like you're not laughing at the little people. So like I worry about it going too far in that direction.
That's fair.
I will say
my envisionment for the film, it's more like making fun of Will Ferrell. Just because like Matthew McConaughey's character is such an asshole and a prick. Like you can make Will Ferrell the same way, like he's bigoted or whatever, or he just, has his mental issue with it. But then like everyone can kind of make fun of him. I think that would be better than what we got at least.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Will Ferrell, he already kind of did this in Elf, where he was like the one big guy in a group of little people. Honestly, that movie probably handles it a lot better. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, hey, put Will Ferrell in this one.
That's a great comparison, actually. You got any other recasts now? I'll throw it back to you.
I did have one other. I was going to recast Patricia Arquette. To me, I think she just kind of stands out as like the weirdest person in this movie. I wanted to go a little trashier with her characters, just someone that seemed a little bit more trashy, no offense, to Jamie Presley. But that's kind of what she's made her name playing through the years, whether it be Not Another Teen Movie or Joe Dirt. And then, of course, most iconically, My Name is Earl. This fits right in between that Joe Dirt, My Name is Earl start period, where I think she could play the weird, like, hitchhiking hippie woman really well, better than Patricia Arquette. Yeah, and I don't want, like, this movie doesn't need, like, big names to sell it. It should just be, like, people that can act and play the roles well to make it slightly better.
It's a good point in her career, too. So I think that's a really good pick. Yeah, maybe she read some lines for this, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised.
The rating, Kody.
Do you like me?
Out of 69. What do you want to rate this movie?
Oh, man, this is a tough one. I mean, this is the worst of the worst here, I think, that we've gone through on KHAP. I believe my lowest rating ever is a 10 for Chicken Little. I think this movie's worse than Chicken Little. In my notes originally, I had it at an 11, but after talking about it for a little bit, I think I'm going to drop it down to a 9. So we'll go 9 out of 69. I think that's even a 9. I think is pretty nice of me to give it that high of a score. Yeah, just a really bad film, and I probably wouldn't recommend it to anybody. But I'll give a few points here and there because the cast is okay, and Dinklage himself probably gives like 5 points alone to the film. So yeah, I'll go with a 9.
So my lowest rated movie is The Wrong Missy at a 9, and this is to me significantly worse than The Wrong Missy.
That's fair.
I was actually looking in the rankings of like all of my movies that I've seen, right, or the ones that I've done on Letterboxd. This movie does make it into the bottom 5 of the 750 something. To me, this is like a half-star movie. The thing is, like, it's weird. We've sat here and talked about it and like how it is really bad. But the thing is, like, it's also like not that bad. Like, it's just kind of just so blah. It's like uninteresting. It's not, like, it's just, there are worse movies is the thing. Like, there are movies that are genuinely worse written, that have a less interesting premise, have less heart, have worse effect. Like, that's the thing. There are so many movies that are worse, but you throw in like the offensive-ness of this movie, obviously gets knocked down quite a few pegs. So it's like, it's a weird thing where it's kind of hard to rate. But I'm going to give it a 4, I guess. I don't know. Subject to change. I'm going to stick it at a 4 just to put it there at the half star. Give room for some worse movies. The Wrong Missy at 9, honestly, is probably too low for that movie. Maybe it should be jumped up a little bit more.
Oh, wow.
Because I think that's like a 1-star film for me. So
interesting. And I'm just curious too. Was this movie above or below He's All That? Because I know that's in the bottom 5 too, I believe.
Well, Kody, let's move on to You Might Also Like.
Who knows? You might like it. It's a killer rush.
Where we can kind of discuss that a little bit, because this is an interesting case of, if you like this movie, we now have to recommend to the people something else that they may enjoy. First of all, if you like this movie, that's kind of already a little bit of a red flag. But I figured I'm just going to go ahead and recommend some other movies that are fucking awful, and maybe you'll like those too. Down here at the bottom, He's All That is actually higher ranked than this movie. So I wouldn't even say check that one out, because you don't even the movie that I think I find most similar to this one is Just Friends, the Ryan Reynolds
You
Anna
hate that movie.
Faris picture that I really hate. And it's kind of a similar thing because it's like, it's not as offensive because I know this is like apples to oranges and really not even something we need to like compare of like what's more offensive. But like Ryan Reynolds as a fat person is not the same as Gary Oldman as a little person. Yeah. However, it is a case of like Ryan Reynolds like dressing up in a fat suit and like making fun of kind of like people who are different from him. So like, I think it exists at least in a common world. And then on top of that, it's just like an absolutely shitty rom-com. Yeah. So I would recommend Just Friends to the people. And then if you want to go for like the bad McConaughey rom-com world, I'll shout out The Failures to Launch, The How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Fool's Gold, those type of things that you might enjoy as well. Those are all better movies than this one.
And my thought process is pretty similar to what you're saying there. I think if you like this movie, you must just like McConaughey. I really don't know why else you would like this movie, if I'm being completely honest. So my Rex, and if you genuinely like this movie, I would say check out Ghost of Girlfriend's Past with Jennifer Garner. It's actually not terrible. It's definitely not one of his best rom-coms, but if you like this movie, you genuinely would probably like that one a lot. And then my second rec, which I do actually recommend a lot to anybody, is the film Contact. And I think I've talked about this before in the podcast, obviously, but I think this is a severely underrated sci-fi flick. Obviously stars McConaughey and Jodie Foster. And it is still like a rom-com. Like the romantic element is the main, element of the story. But there's like some cool and like some darker sci-fi stuff as you move along through the film. It's something I'm nostalgic for. A movie my mom liked a lot and I watched a few times growing up. But there's some weird CGI stuff at the end too, which I've seen online that people don't really like.
Robert Zemeckis, weird CGI. I don't think that's ever happened. That doesn't sound right.
Any Disney remakes? No, he'd never do that. Yeah. So if you don't like this movie, go watch Contact. And if you do like this movie, go watch Ghost of Girlfriend Fast. I would say. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I like it. Moving on to the final question.
All right, listen. I got one last question for you.
Kody, you want to take it away? What's your final question about Tiptoes?
Yeah, I think I have an interesting one for you this week, and I still debate it in my head. I don't really know. I think it can go either way. I'm going to ask you, who is the better actor? Gary Oldman or Matthew McConaughey? Both Oscar winners in the past, millennia. So I think it's a tough one.
I have seen way more Matthew McConaughey performances just in general because of the movies that I watch typically. So I'll say that right off the bat. But I think in a traditional acting sense, Gary Oldman is probably the better actor from like a trained theatrical stage, Oscar winner perspective. I think it's Oldman, especially when it comes to like period pieces or playing people, whether it's playing Truman in Oppenheimer, playing Churchill in The Darkest Hour, like that sort of lane, or playing Herman Mankiewicz in Mank. Like that sort of lane is where Gary Oldman can really fly really well, and he's amazing. However, to me, McConaughey, in terms of like total range and just like the abilities of like the different parts he can play, whether it's, like the fun rom-com hot guy, or even like the more serious, like you said, sci-fi stuff, Interstellar, the dramatic dad stuff, the out there country guy in Dallas Buyers Club, the rodeo clown, or even like the, detective and True Detective, like the range of roles, the crazy stuff in Wolf of Wall Street, the Magic Mike performance that's like country, but also hypersexualized. To me, there's just so much more to McConaughey that I would prefer to see him in a new movie at the very least.
I like that a lot. And I think I would agree with you, strangely enough. Like you're saying, I mean, classically trained Gary Oldman, he's a hell of an actor. They're both kind of Swiss Army knives in that sense too. But like the charisma and just the undeniable like star power, I think, of McConaughey gives him a slight edge.
McConaughey is a movie star in a way that not many people are, and Gary Oldman definitely doesn't.
I think like Dallas Buyers Club is, like you said, shows like the different ranges you can do as well. But that's a toss-up, but I think I do agree with you.
And I don't think McConaughey's ever had like a hotter run of 3-4 years or Oldman's never had a run as hot as those 3-4 years.
And that's funny because that was the time like people realized like, holy shit, like McConaughey's a great actor. And then he got thrown into all these great projects, I think. And obviously his career took off. So I think that's pretty telling as well.
All right, my question for you here, Kody.
Yeah.
Of the two movies we've been given as punishment, Stalker or Tiptoes, If you had to watch them on loop for an entire day in a movie theater from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which would you choose, Stalker or Tiptoes?
I mean, this is a pretty easy answer, I think, for me. It's got to be Stalker.
Really? Wow. Okay.
I don't even think it's close, specifically. Maybe I was a bit harsh on Stalker. In hindsight, that movie is pretty boring, if I'm being completely
Well,
honest.
that's the thing. It's so boring if you got to watch it like multiple times. That's the thing. It's like this one's at least kind of like it's a little funny. It would start over a lot quicker. Like it would run. I don't know.
That would make it worse. Also, it's also shorter, so I would.
That's true. You will have to watch it more.
Also, in Stalker, like I feel like I could fall asleep in several scenes of that movie pretty easily. And
I forgot to mention, it's like Clockwork Orange style, where they hold your eyes open and you have to watch it. You don't get to fall asleep.
Big Clockwork guy.
Big Vigo. Yeah, I just watched it, so making references.
That still doesn't change my answer. I don't think. I think Stalker too, like the rewatchability of it. Like maybe I didn't understand that scene the first time I saw it.
There's more to gain. I think you could really hone in on something.
That makes sense more. Yeah, maybe I like the movie a lot more. So I think that'd be better for me as a person and just my psyche overall. Yeah.
Which one would you rather revisit for a podcast?
Definitely Stalker. We should do a Stalker repod, dude. That'd be fun.
Restock. Could be coming in the future. Who knows? 3 movie mini draft.
Well, it is draft day.
So this week we went with movies that are rotten and have an Oscar winner in it. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had to do our own research here. I have no idea what movies you've come up with. Who knows what movies I've come up with? Kody, I'll give you the first pick because I'm a nice guy.
What a nice guy. All right. I don't know.
And I will be double checking that all of these are less than 60%.
Yes, 100%. For myself, I think with the first pick, I have to make an unbelievably biased pick. There's no other way I think I could go. So I think I'm going to go with possibly the best film of all time, National Treasure. Nicolas Cage, of course, is an Oscar winner.
Leaving Las Vegas, 19.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Before everybody, figured out he's crazy. But, for me, and I did have to double check that he won an Oscar because I was like, I feel like he's definitely been nominated a few times, but I don't know if he ever won. And I've never seen Leaving Las Vegas. So shout out to it. But, this is an obvious pick, I think, especially for myself. Classic film, like I'm saying here. And go check out our pod on it if you want to hear more. But, yeah, I'll take National Treasure at 1.
That does knock off what I was probably going to take with my first pick as well. So smart move by you. Obviously, National Treasure. We did a whole episode on it. So go listen to that, too.
Yeah.
So with my first pick, I'm going to take another 90s film to match you, Kody. And I'm going to go with the Robin Williams classic Jumanji. Of course, he's an Oscar winner, for Good Will Hunting. And we're bringing Kirsten Dunst back on the pod for another week. Jumanji, the original.
I like that pick a lot. Shout out to the Hunter Soldier guy. Gave me nightmares as a kid, but yeah, also made me really like board games. So good flick, good pick. I think
52% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, that is wild. I think Robin deserves better than that. And also the National Treasure is not a '90s movie, so I don't know what you're vamping about. But
Leaving Las Vegas is. That's why I said that.
My second pick here. From my very small research database on this, there's actually a lot of films that I like in these categories. So I'm sure there's tons more that we're missing here. I think I'm going to go with my second pick, another film that I've watched recently and I've talked about recently. I'm going to go with Spaceballs. You brought it up this episode, actually. Mel Brooks, I believe, is an Oscar winner. In that movie, I think it was at like 58 or 59%. So it was close on the Rotten scores. I need to double check that. But I love this movie. Classic spoof film. We really don't get spoof films as good as this anymore these days, or really just made like this at all these days. And Mel Brooks is awesome. Combining with sci-fi and Rick Moranis, I feel like it's hard to make a bad film. So if you haven't seen Spaceballs, I'd highly recommend that up. But I'll take that at number 2.
I was gonna say, did Rick Moranis win an Oscar for playing the demon dog or whatever in Ghostbusters?
He should have. Also in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I think he won for that too, didn't he? Had to have. No?
He shrunk his kids, so that takes commitment. It's interesting. You say there's a lot of movies you like. There's a lot of movies I think are like decent that are options here.
Yeah.
With Jumanji as my first pick, I feel like the world is kind of open. I'm going to go for a movie that is bad, but is one that I personally really like. And it's just exists in a whole franchise of great films. And that's Men in Black 2, the follow up to the original Men in Black franchise.
God,
film.
that movie's terrible.
Obviously, not as good as the first one, but it's Men in Black, and Will Smith's an Oscar winner, so it fits.
There's so many better. I literally have Will Smith 2 picks lined up, and you went with Men in Black 2. Unbelievable. I hate that movie.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't go for fucking Shark Tale, iRobot, or Focus, Kody, but
nope, still didn't cut my list. The two that I had down for were Bad Boys 2, which is criminally under. Bad Boys 2 is actually pretty good. And then I had Hancock as well because I like Jason Bateman. But I'm not going to take either of those. My third pick, I'm going to go. I don't know. I went on the Sam Jackson train basically because I believe he's won an Oscar. I don't remember what for, but I just looked it up and it's he did. So hopefully that's right. I'm gonna go with. I'm in between. I used to have a pick, but it doesn't really matter. I'm in between like Die Hard with a Vengeance. Does he not have an Oscar?
He got an honorary one.
Oh, that's what it was. That counts. What do you mean?
Okay, well, okay, sure. 2022 Academy Honorary Award. I don't know about that.
He has an Academy Award. Can't deny that. So I think it counts. And you guys can come at me in the comments. I don't care. I'm gonna go. Well, I want to pick Phantom Menace, but I can't. I'm gonna take Die Hard with a Vengeance. I think it's another one of those where it's at like the 55 range, so it's fairly close to being not rotten. But I don't know. I don't know how this movie's rotten. I feel like the first Die Hard's got to be around like the 80 percentile, and with a Vengeance is I think just as good. Obviously there was a sequel in between that was pretty bad, but the addition of Sam Jackson as Zeus to this franchise I think really invigorates it. It's got the whole Simon Says thing going on. That's fun. It's got Alan Rickman's brother, from the one. So it's got some like cool callbacks and I think a pretty good action flick. So I'll take that at number 3 with a little asterisk next to it. Thanks to Sammy Boy.
Yeah, because I mean, we start going down this Academy honorary winners. There's a lot of people on this.
He has an Oscar.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
What's your third pick? You going Focus?
No, I'm gonna stay away from Will Smith, but I do actually I think Focus not that bad of a movie. Will Smith and Margot Robbie having like insane sexual chemistry for 2 hours. I don't know, that's fine. Since this is my last pick, I can kind of just throw out a couple and hey, maybe you'll pick one up. Jurassic World Dominion, of course, Laura Dern, Oscar winner, appears in that movie. The live action Aladdin, that's another Will Smith film you could break out. He has a ton. I mean, After Earth also fits in there. And then if you want to go for a couple Brendan Fraser joints, there's a few. Most notably, we just watched Blast from the Past. Hey, that fits. The Mummy, the original Mummy, I think just barely is over like a 60 or 61%. But The Mummy 2 and The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, both of those are rotten. And then like Encino Man, a few other Brendan Fraser flicks. But the movie I'm going to take is A Knight's Tale, which of course has Heath Ledger. It's also used as a soundbite in this very podcast. I think it's just a really interesting take on like what a medieval movie is because it utilizes modern classic rock music, and it also takes like poetry from Shakespeare, and it's just this weird bending of like genres and in time periods, and it's a fun one, and Heath Ledger's great, and it's also got a Vision in it. What's that dude's name?
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany. Yeah.
So, good
cast. Knight's Tale.
Can't go wrong with a Ledger flick, so I like that a lot. I'll shout out one other honorable mention I had too. I mentioned the Phantom Menace, obviously.
What is a Phantom Menace on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's pretty. I think it's the worst Star Wars prequel by far. Past that, I was thinking as well. Tron Legacy. I think you like that movie a little bit, don't you? Jeff Bridges,
seen it.
Of course. Same.
That's all I can really say.
But Jeff Bridges obviously won an Academy Award. And that movie's it's kind of just like okay, like the soundtrack's good, the visuals are pretty good, but I mean, other than young Jeff Bridges CGI face, that's god awful. But the story's pretty mid, I think. So that made my honorable mention.
Let's move over to recommendations, Kody.
Karen, honey, what are you watching?
What have you been into? It's been a minute since we recorded.
It has, and I wanted to mention a couple little things off the bat. But if my audio sounds a little bit different than previous podcasts, I am in a new location. So I moved to a new apartment. So that's pretty much what I've been up to a lot, honestly. And it's taken away a little bit of my TV and movie watching, but it has been a while. So I do have a good amount of stuff. First off, first I finished Andor finally. Finally watched the last couple episodes. I mean, the finale I thought was good. I mean, it was whatever. I kind of got lost, I think, once they escaped the whole prison. I think it kind of just slowed down a lot, and I was like, I kind of wish Andy Serkis was here, but whatever. And Stellan Skarsgård, if you watched our underrated actors and actresses episodes, I talked very highly of him, but I didn't really love his character or his performance in this series. I would assume they're going to do a season 2 because they set one up pretty easily, and he's going to be a main player, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I mean, for Star Wars shows, I guess Andor is pretty good, but I'm really not the biggest fan. Past that, some movie watching I've done recently. I checked out Manchester by the Sea. Oh, and
I saw that.
I guess as well to preface, we were on a Rough Cut retrospective episode together where we did a fun Oscar draft. So go check that out. And then I was just on one too. That was a Marvel draft. So go check out both of those. But that Oscar draft, kind of, I marked down a couple of the pictures in there being like, I haven't seen these for a while. I should check them out. Manchester by the Sea was one of them. God, that movie's sad. But it is really good performances. The scene between what's his face, Affleck and Michelle Williams, where they just like see each other in the street, crazy emotional, but really good kind of just acting caliber stuff in there. I don't even know if I would recommend that movie to most people. I probably wouldn't, so don't check that out. Some other things I did. I watched a Kingsman double feature the other night because I hadn't seen the original Kingsman for a while, and that's one of my favorite, just like stupid action movies. I like it a lot.
What a way to break in the new apartment, Kody. A little Kingsman double feature.
I know. And funny enough, I'd never seen The Golden Circle. I saw like TikTok clips of the
Whiskey
ending.
And of course, yes, the ending.
I mean, him singing on the mine and everything, which is good, but I didn't really love it. I mean, Channing Tatum is pretty much completely wasted, and then Pedro Pascal is like this double agent for no reason, and also Julianne Moore is fucking terrible. So yeah, not great. I really wouldn't recommend that. I think that's pretty much everything. Am I missing anything? I think that's everything movie-wise. One little shout-out. Probably nobody's listening at this point, but I'll give it anyways. Korbin, you will not believe who told me was listening to our podcast. It is my grandpa has been on a KHAP binge. When he found out we had a podcast, I guess he didn't know. I don't really know how, but he was super surprised. He called me a bunch of times and he listened to the Oppenheimer episode and had a ton of thoughts on that. He said he was going to go see Barbie after listening to our podcast because he thought it was really interesting. So, Pops.
So, here's the question.
Yeah.
When's he coming on?
Well, the thing
is he a Zoom user?
Doesn't have a computer, I don't think. So maybe do something special one time where maybe I go back home and I can just pass the mic to him and stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
But shout out to Pops, man. Another avid listener of KHAP, and deserves a shout out. But that's pretty much my weekly watch there.
Hey, thanks for listening. Glad you here.
Big ups, Pops.
Share this pod with your grandparents if you're listening. That's grandparent approved. A couple things that I wanted to talk about that I've seen. First one, watch this on Hulu. Is a movie called On the Count of Three. It released in 2021, I think straight to Hulu, so kind of didn't really get seen by a lot of people. It stars Gerard Carmichael and Christopher Abbott. Tiffany Haddish is also there in a small role. But the idea of the movie is these two best friends. They basically agree their lives suck. At the end of the day, they're going to kill themselves. They're going to kill each other together, basically. They're going to commit suicide. But they're going to spend one final day together. So that's the conception of the movie. It's a tough watch at a lot of different points from start to finish that deals with depression and mental health and, friendship and love and loss. And it is a tough movie to watch at different points. But I think it was a really brilliant directorial debut from Gerard Carmichael, who both stars and directs the movie. It's got some great comedy in it, and it's a short, emotional, beautiful watch that I really recommend people check out. On top of that, I also saw The Nun 2, which I didn't love. The latest entry into the Conjuring cinematic universe. Empty theater for that one. And then I also checked out this movie called Drinking Buddies, which stars. Are you ready? Are you familiar with this movie, Kody?
I saw your letterbox.
Yeah.
What is that movie?
Stars Olivia Wilde, Jake Johnson, Anna Kendrick, and Ron Livingston. It's directed by Joe Swanberg and released in 2013. I think the movie is like 80 to 90% improvised in terms of the dialogue.
Nice.
It's kind of on like the tail end of the mumblecore movement, which we talked about, I think, a little bit with Greta Gerwig earlier in the podcast. And I don't know, this is just a really weird, like early 2010s artifact. But I would recommend checking it out. It's very raw. It's very real. It's just kind of like what happens when people are in relationships that maybe aren't working out and, are flirting with people, and just all the emotions and the human interactions feel very authentic. I think the dialogue at points feels a little bit awkward and things are like, this doesn't feel super cinematic, but I think that's because of the naturalistic improvisational nature of the filming. But it creates some really interesting character moments as well.
That is cool. And that cast is awesome. So I think that is an addition to my list as well. One other thing I did want to shout out too, you guys have all been hyping up Theater Camp, and that just came out to Hulu. So I believe I'll be checking that out instantaneously.
Definitely go see that. To the listeners as well. Check that out on Hulu.
Stay for review on that. But dude, I feel like that's such a cool cast for that time. Like Olivia Wilde, Anna Kendrick in 2013. It's just like so random, but so great at the same time. Yeah, I might have to check that out pretty soon as well.
Also, weirdly enough, I didn't even know this until like 2 days after I watched the movie. The Jason Sudeikis appears, but that's unrelated. But the fourth billed person in the movie is Ty West, who is the director of Pearl and X and Maxine. And like after the fact, I was like, wait, that guy who was in the movie is that guy? It's just like one of those weird connections that happens.
A genre flip, evidently. That is cool. Yeah, I like that.
That's pretty much all I got for the recommendations. Definitely go check out the RCR episodes that I've been in and the two that you've been in the past 2 weeks. We've been taking over there, and they'll be coming on soon for us as well.
True. Yeah, big month for the compadres. If you haven't checked out RCR, obviously go give them a shout on Spotify and all of the availables out there. Also go vote for me in the Marvel draft. I believe we both lost the Oscar vote.
Rigged.
Which had some burners out there evidently, mine included. But use all your burners and vote for me in the Marvel draft and get KHAP a win here.
All right. With that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Stay KHAPing.
Peace.
Thanks.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.